Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do a video all about 20 books that you can read during October as part of the spooky kind of Halloween season or very atmospheric reads that I would recommend for the Halloween season. So I don't particularly enjoy the dressing up of Halloween and the decorating. I will tell you, I'm not a very decorating kind of person around my house. And so a lot of my kind of celebration of holidays actually has to do with the books I read. So I love reading very atmospheric books during the end of September, beginning, and then all of October that kind of have to do with Halloween or have to do with kind of spooky or thriller kind of thing. So I have 20 books here that I am going to go through and recommend, and I'll just read the first little bit of either the back of the book or the inside cover so you can kind of decide for yourself. We have a mix of books, lots of YA, obviously. I do have some adult books, and I actually have a couple of middle grade books as well. So I hope that you like the recommendations. If any of them sound good to you, drop a comment down below. Let me know which ones sound good to you, or if you have any recommendations of your own aside from what I'm showing in here. I would love to hear what you think. So let's get into it. The first book I'm going to recommend is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. Now, this is a book that I have heard amazing things about and just tons of stuff on booktube and everything. And so the inside just says the year is 1806. England is beleaguered by the long war with Napoleon, and it is hundreds of years since practical magic faded into the nation's past. But scholars of this glorious history suddenly discover that one practicing magician still remains, the reclusive Mr. Norrell of Hertfew Abbey. Challenged to demonstrate his powers, Norrell causes the statues of York Cathedral to speak and sing and sends a thrill through the country. The magician proceeds to London, trailed by excited rumors, where he raises a beautiful young woman from the dead and finally enters the war, summoning an army of ghostly ships to terrify the French. Yet Norrell is soon challenged by the emergence of another magician, the brilliant novice Jonathan Strange. Young, handsome, and daring, Strange is the very opposite of the cautious, fussy Norrell. Still, Norrell agrees to take Strange as a pupil, and the young magician joins England's cause, enduring the rigors of Wellington's campaign in Portugal to lend the army his supernatural skill on the battlefield. So that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. The next book I'd like to recommend is Sadie by Courtney Summers. Again, a book that I've heard about here on BookTube, and you'll see Nala kind of in the background here. Anyway, so on the back it says, when popular radio personality West McCrae receives a desperate phone call from a stranger imploring him to find 19-year-old runaway Sadie Hunter, he's not convinced there's a story there. Girls go missing all the time. But when it's revealed that Sadie fled home after the brutal murder of her little sister Maddie, West travels to the small town of Cold Creek, Colorado to uncover what happened. Sadie has no idea that her journey to avenge her sister will soon become the subject of a blockbuster podcast. Armed with a switchblade, Sadie follows meager clues, hoping they'll lead to the man who took Maddie's life, because she's determined to make him pay with his own. But as West traces her path to the darkest, most dangerous corners of big cities and small towns, a deeply unsettling mystery begins to unfold, one that's bigger than them both. Can he find Sadie before it's too late? Alternating between Sadie's unflinching voice as she hunts the killer and the podcast transcripts tracking the clues she's left behind, Sadie is a breathless thriller about the lengths we go to protect the ones we love and the high price we pay when we can't. It will haunt you long after you reach the final page. So that sounds awesome. The next book is actually one that I just picked up today, and that is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. This one all of these books I've just heard awesome things about. But this one I particularly am excited for because it is Latinx representation. And I really am trying to read more own voices and more diverse literature. So this one is pretty exciting. And it says, the spirit's face was screwed up tight in a grimace. His fingers knotted into the material of his shirt. He wore a hooded black leather jacket over a white tee, faded jeans, and a pair of Converse. That's not Miguel, Maritza tried to whisper, but she'd never had a very good inside voice. Adriel groaned and dragged a hand over his face. On the bright side, he had actually summoned a real-life spirit. On the not-so-bright side, he had summoned the wrong one. So, sounds pretty interesting. The next book I am going to recommend is The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. And this one says, nothing stays buried forever. 17-year-old Rin cares about only two things, her family and her family's graveyard. And right now, both are in dire straits. Since the death of their parents, Rin and her siblings have been scraping together a meager existence as grave diggers in the remote village of Colbrin, which sits at the foot of a harsh and deadly mountain range that was once home to the Fae. The problem with being a grave digger in Colbrin, though, is that the dead don't always stay dead. The risen corpses are known as bone houses, and legend says that they're the result of an old curse. When Ellis, an apprentice mapmaker with a mysterious past, arrives in town, the bone houses attack with a new ferocity. What is it that draws them near? And more importantly, how can they be stopped for good? Together, Ellis and Rin embark on a journey that will take them into the heart of the mountains, where they will have to face both the curse and the deeply buried truths about themselves. Equal parts classic horror novel and original fairy tale, The Bone Houses will have you spellbound from the very first page, and I'm already spellbound by what it says on the cover. The next book I'm going to recommend is How to Hang a Witch by Adriana Mather. I actually got to meet Adriana and talk to her at one of the book conferences that I went to a couple years ago, and it turns out she's actually a descendant of the Mathers from the Salem witch trials. She is literally one of their kin. And so she went and she did some research about her family, who are the Mathers, and about her family during the Salem witch trials. And this book, even though it's fiction and it's not based, I guess, on real events, it does have nods to her family history. So it says, Salem, Massachusetts is the site of the infamous witch trials and the new home of 16-year-old Samantha Mather. Recently transplanted from New York City, Sam is not exactly welcomed with open arms. She is a descendant of Cotton Mather, one of the men responsible for those trials. And almost immediately she becomes the enemy of a group of girls who call themselves the Descendants. And guess who their ancestors were? As if dealing with that wasn't enough, Sam finds herself face to face with a real, live, well, technically dead, ghost. A handsome, angry ghost who wants Sam to stop touching his stuff. Soon, Sam discovers she is at the center of a century-old curse affecting everyone, with ties to the trials. Sam must come to terms with the ghost and work with the Descendants to stop a deadly cycle that has been going on since the first alleged witch was hanged. If any town should have learned its lesson, it's Salem, but history may be about to repeat itself. So I think it's really cool that she's kind of talking about a situation that might have happened, maybe, but she herself is a descendant of Cotton Mather. So I think that's pretty cool. Another good recommendation for the spooky season. The next book is How to Make Friends with the Dark. And this one, while might not be Halloween-y, it's just dark, Halloween, spooky. So it's how to do that. But let me just read the inside. Here's what happens when your mother dies. It's the brightest day of summer and it's dark outside. It's dark in your house, dark in your room, and dark in your heart. You feel like the darkness is growing to split you apart. That's how it feels for Tiger. It's always been Tiger and her mother against the world. Then, on a day like any other, Tiger's mother dies, and now it's Tiger alone. Here's how you learn to make friends with the dark. From the author of the powerful and heartbreaking novel Girl in Pieces comes a story about an ordinary girl who loses everything in an instant and how she must learn to live all over again. So, well, maybe not spooky, it's just kind of a dark, maybe sad book, but something to go along with the season because it's very atmospheric. The next two I'm recommending are actually part of a series, and the first one is The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding by Alexandra Bracken, and its sequel, The Lost Life of Prince Alistair. Now, these two books sound phenomenal, and of course I haven't read them yet, so that's awesome. So here's the inside of The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding. Prosper is the only unexceptional Redding in his old and storied family history, that is, until he discovers the demon living inside him. Turns out Prosper's great something grandfather made, and then broke, a contract with a malefactor, a demon who exchanges fortune for eternal servitude. And weirdly enough, 800-year-old Alistair isn't exactly the forgiving type. The fiend has reawakened with one purpose: to destroy the family whose success he ensured and who then betrayed him. With only days to break the curse and banish Alistair back to the demon realm, Prosper is playing unwilling host to the fiend, who delights in tormenting him with nasty insults and constant attempts to trick him into a contract. Yeah, Prosper will take his afterlife without a sight of eternal servitude, thanks. But with the help of his long-lost uncle, Barnabas, and his daughter Nell, a witch in training, it seems like Prosper has at least a fighting chance of ridding himself of Alistair before the demon escapes and wreaks havoc on his family. Little does Prosper know, the malefactor's control over his body grows stronger with each passing night, and there's a lot Alistair isn't telling his dim-witted, but admittedly strong-willed human host. From the #1 New York Times best-selling author Alexandra Bracken comes a tale of betrayal and revenge, of old hurts passed down from generation to generation. Can you ever fully right a wrong, ever truly escape your history? Or will Prosper and Alistair be doomed to repeat it? This sounds phenomenal. I cannot wait to read it. The next book I'm going to recommend is Toil and Trouble, which is 15 Tales of Women and Witchcraft, and it is edited by Jessica Spotswood and Tess Sharpay. This one is 15 tales, obviously, and they are of kind of witchcraft, and I love it. The cover is beautiful, and I am very excited to read this. The collection reveals a universal truth. There's nothing more powerful than a teenage girl who believes in herself, which I fully 100% believe, or let's just be honest, any woman, or man for that matter, but we're just focusing on women here. So the inside says, history is filled with stories of women accused of witchcraft, of fearsome girls with arcane knowledge. Toil and Trouble features 15 stories of girls embracing their power, reclaiming their destinies, and using their magic to create, to curse, to cure, and to kill. This sounds awesome. The next book is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and the reason that I recommend this one is almost solely due to the fact that they have creepy pictures on the inside. I have read this series once and I'm very excited to read it again. Here's the inside for you. A mysterious island, an abandoned orphanage, a strange collection of very peculiar photographs. It all waits to be discovered in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, an unforgettable novel that mixes fiction and photography in a thrilling reading experience. As our story opens, a horrific family tragedy sets 16-year-old Jacob journeying to a remote island off the coast of Wales, where he discovers the crumbling ruins of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. As Jacob explores its abandoned bedrooms and hallways, it becomes clear that Miss Peregrine's children were more than just peculiar. They may have been dangerous. They may have been quarantined on the deserted island for good reason, and somehow, impossible though it seems, they may still be alive. A spine-tingling fantasy illustrated with haunting vintage photography, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children will delight adults, teens, and anyone who relishes an adventure in the shadows. And the really cool thing is that I ended up getting this as a gift from one of my former students, Taylor, and it is a very precious one to me. But I'm going to reread the series. Phenomenal. And apparently Titan wanted to come say hello. So we have Nala up here, we have Titan here, and we're going to keep going. The next book I'm recommending is The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one. It is something that just reminded me, the title, it just reminds me of, Salem Witch Trials, Halloween. The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one. Amanda Lovelace, she also wrote The Princess Saves Herself in this one. Just kind of a cool book to pick up. It is written in poetry, so very short. You could probably sit down and read this 20-30 minutes tops. The next one should come as no surprise to anyone who knows me, and that is Hocus Pocus, the all-new sequel. So this is something, I love Hocus Pocus. I have watched this movie since I was in junior high, high school. My sisters and I were even the three witches for Halloween one year. If I can find it, I'll put the picture up here. But this, when it came out, I was like, well, of course I'm getting it. Hello, it's Hocus Pocus. Oh, and did you know that the sequel is coming out this year?
Thank you, Max, for that marvelous introduction.
Hocus Pocus 2. Super excited about that. Disney Plus, I believe. Fantastic. So this one is the actual story of Hocus Pocus the movie. So it's the same story that we've seen in it. But there's also a sequel. So I'm wondering, actually, if the sequel that I read in here is going to be the one that's coming out on Disney Plus. So we will see. I meant to read this last year during October, but to be honest with you, I never got to it. So this year is gonna be the year. The next book I'll recommend is The Dark Days Club by Allison Goodman. Again, another one I got based on my watching of BookTube, and the inside says, London, 1812. 18-year-old Lady Helen Rexhall is on the eve of her debut presentation at the royal court of George III. Her life should revolve around gowns, dancing, and securing a suitable marriage. Instead, when one of her family's maids disappears, she is drawn into the shadows of Regency London. There she meets Lord Carlston, one of the few chosen to stop the perpetrators, a cabal of demons that has infiltrated all levels of society. Carlston is not a man she should be anywhere near, especially when the taint of scandal that surrounds him. Yet he offers her help and the possibility of finally discovering the truth about the mysterious deaths of her parents. Soon, the two of them are investigating a terrifying conspiracy that threatens to plunge the newly enlightened world back into darkness. But can Helen trust a man whose own life is built on lies? And does she have the strength to face the dangers of this hidden world and learn the truth about her family's legacy? Set in the glittering social world of the Regency upper crust, The Dark Days Club is a supernatural adventure that introduces New York Times bestselling author Allison Goodman's Lady Helen Rexhall, another heroine whom, like Iona, readers can take to their hearts. I am very excited about this, and I absolutely love the cover. Regency era England is one of my favorite times to read about, so I'm excited. Next, we have one of the books in a series that I really enjoy, but this in particular just matches with the mood of October and Halloween, and that is Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco. This is one of the books in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and so the reason I picked this obviously is because of Dracula. And the back says, a man impaled by a sharp wooden stake. A young chambermaid drained of her blood. They say it's Prince Dracula arisen from the dead. I say it's the living, not the dead, we should fear the most. So pick this up and then read the others in the series too. They're awesome. The next one is The May Queen Murders by Sarah Jude. The inside of this one says, welcome to Rowan's Glen, a place full of old-fashioned superstition and secrets. Years ago, a teenage girl was murdered after being crowned queen at the Glen's May Day celebration, and outsiders have regarded the isolated farming community with suspicion ever since. But that was before Ivy Templeton was even born. She lived in the Glen all of her 16 years and feels safe there in the company of her free-spirited cousin Heather and their friend Rook, son of the sheriff. Until animals start showing up dead, clearly from unnatural means. Dark omens seem to appear everywhere Ivy goes, and Heather, who used to tell Ivy everything, is sneaking off after dark with a mysterious lover. Ivy worries her cousin could be in danger, especially after Heather is elected queen of the May Day celebration. When Heather goes missing, Ivy must come to terms with the fact that she never knew her beloved cousin, or Rowan's Glen, as well as she thought she did. Readers looking for horror, romance, and suspense will find it all in this chilling tale that resonates with dark beauty. The next book is one I'm sure you all have heard about, so it's going to come at no surprise that I am recommending Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. And this one is just supposed to be this super cute story about these two friends who work in a pumpkin patch together, and apparently they're going off to college and relationships may form, but I have not read this one. I actually got it at Barnes & Noble for 50% off, so yay. But I'm excited to pick this one up. And last but certainly not least, I have a middle grade series to recommend, and that is the Gustav Gloom series. So the first one is Gustav Gloom and the People Taker, Gustav Gloom and the Nightmare Vault, Gustav Gloom and the Four Terrors, and Gustav Gloom and the Cryptic Carousel. So I am just so intrigued by these. Let me just read you the back of the first one. Gustav Gloom's neighbors think he is the unhappiest little boy in the world. But what they don't know is that the strange, dark house Gustav lives in is filled with more wonders and mysteries than could ever be explained. But explain is exactly what Gustav needs to do when Fernie, moves in across the street. And that's when the adventure really begins. When her cat chases his own shadow into the Gloom mansion, not only does Fernie get lost in Gustav's house full of shadows, but she also finds herself being chased by the mysterious people taker. With Gustav's help, Fernie must save herself, her cat, and ultimately her family from what lurks in the Gloom mansion. So, sounds super interesting. And I got these at the end of Halloween last year. So I was like, I'm so saving these for Halloween 2020 and I get to read them. And that's it for my 20 books to read during this time of the year where we're getting into fall and Halloween is coming. I hope that one of those books sounds interesting to you. I hope that you pick one up. Again, let me know which sound interesting and which you want to hear more about later. And comment down below if you have any others. I hope you all have an amazing day. And remember to take care of yourself, take care of others, and happy reading. Bye.